Alrighty, g'day guys, welcome back to the second installment of the Season 15 Power Rankings for MLP. As voted by you guys, the next div was Nobility. When I was deciding which one to look at, looked at the votes, and it was actually really close. Yeah, you almost turned it around and won an Elementary, which you will get tomorrow, followed by Duality, and then Perplexity on, well, my Friday. Yeah, apologies, this one was a little late. I just had to re-record this intro bit here. For some reason it cut out on the original recording. But yeah, now we will get back into what I already have recorded, which is all my analysis on the teams. Okay, so we are going to start off with Jimmy's team here. Once again, we're going in draft order, just because that makes the most sense. It's the least biased way to do it. Starting off, Jimmy has here, he's got a Shifu, he's got Reuniclus, Melmetal, Megazard Y, Tangrowth, Donphan, Alomomola, Diancie, Ambipom, Ninjask, Shiftry, and Chandelure. Quite an interesting team to look at. Obviously that round one of Shifu is terrifying. And then Melmetal, I think Melmetal's a really nice pairing for a Shifu, because Shifu can kind of like... Fairy's really the one thing that wants to take hits from this mon, and then maybe like bulky fighting types, but bulky fighting types are like very few and far between, and you've kind of answered both of those things in Reuniclus Melmetal, because I can't think of a single fairy that wants to take a double Iron Bash, and then you've got Reuniclus, which is just Reuniclus things. It's a bit early, so I think, but to be honest, it wasn't making it back round 4, I don't think, and I think it's just a really nice pick. Then the Megazard Y, again, like, it just kind of... It's another thing that you can bring in off the back of like an Urshifu forcing a switch, so you can U-turn into that, and it's just another heavy hitter. So like between Urshifu, Melmetal, and Zard Y, we already have really good breaking power. And then from there, you've got like the regen core of Tangrowth or Alomomola. Alomomola is, like, I hate that thing, but I recognise that it's a decent mon. Personally, I will never draft it. I have done it once and absolutely hated it, but I always hate playing against it. So, if that's a mon that Jimmy can use well, I think it's a decent pickup. You got like Diancie, so like even these middle 4 mons here that you can see, like that's a really nice core, because well, Tangrowth doesn't like taking ice attacks or flying attacks. You've got Diancie here to cover those. You got Donphan in there for some removal, and then Alomomola just to be Alomomola things. And then you've got some pivots down here, and of course Chandelure. Chandelure's a bit weird one here, because you already have sort of like a middling speed tier, very specially offensive flying type. So for me, this probably doesn't gel the most. And then I feel like Ninjask, Ambipom, Shiftry. Shiftry I kind of get because like it's a Sun Sweeper. But yeah, I feel like Chandelure's points could have been used a bit better. Yeah, it's not bad. Also, just looking at these speed tiers, like there's a lot of mons. Like when you've got 6 mons at 65 or below, and then your next 2 are like grouped up at 80. Granted, one of them's a Sun Sweeper, but this is probably not going to come very much, the Shiftry. It's a pretty slow team. If you remember in yesterday's video, for those who watched it, I discussed that I really like having either 2 mons at 110 or above, if they're going to be mons that are coming almost every week, or 3 mons at 110 or above if like a couple of them are like niche lower tier picks. Like Ambipom I used as actually an example of that sort of vibe. So to me, this team's very slow. It's quite slow. It does have great breaking power, and in terms of taking physical hits, it is amazing. Like you got Melmetal, Tangrowth, Donphan, Alomomola, Diancie. Like even a Shifu at 100 bulk, like it can come in on physical hits and like force switches. Special hits, however, it's kind of down to like Reuniclus, AV Tang kind of can mitigate this SPDF stat. Diancie, again, Alomomola can kind of, but it doesn't really love taking just like raw special hits. What I talk about when I talk about like big special hits, I'm thinking like a Porygon Z's tri-attack, like something that's adaptability, 135 special attack. That's the one that came to my head because the Nobility mascot is PZ. But yeah, just something that just forces switches. So yeah, I feel like that's one downside. The speed tier as well. We can look at the pivots, and I was saying that we got really good breakers to force in off our switches. Ignoring Ninjask for a second, because I don't think this mon comes to very many games. We have Urshifu, Ambipom, and Diancie, and even Diancie's is Baton Pass, and on this mon being one of your 2 rockers, it kind of wants rocks, it kind of wants like Rock Stab, Fairy Stab, Toxic, like, there's a lot of like moves that Diancie wants, like Baton Pass might not always fit there, so I would have loved to have seen some more like Volt Turn on this core, and like an electric type, a way to break bulky waters, or like an electric type to stop flying, because something like special flying attacks is a bit rough for this, because it's kind of like heavily on Diancie and then kind of Melmetal, so like, I don't know, I feel like there's one more type that I think it's missing. Yeah, Dragon, Grounded Poison, Electric. I feel like just a Dragon type would have been nice. Actually, while I was on this page, let's have a look at our little thing here. I know you can't see it all, but I will sort of relay what I see to you. The only 2, as I said, like, we're a little bit flying weak. And yeah, just sort of the overall, like, you can see in here there's a lot of, like, through these stats, there's a lot of red, and that sort of comes with it being like a pseudo Sun team. But yeah, there's no overall glaring weaknesses. I just think sort of like Ambipom, Ninjask, Shiftry, Chandelure, maybe like a Alomola even could have just been used to like better value picks to help round out your like top 4 mons here, because I really liked this start. But yeah, so for Jimmy, I think Jimmy's getting a 6 out of 10, just because you have some nice synergy and breakers. You just struggle getting them in. You struggle being fast. But yeah, so let's move on to Aberforth. This is the second, and so Aberforth has the team of Dragapult, Jirachi, Thundy-T, Terrakion, Manaphy, Tauros, Incineroar, Bulu, Wobbuffet, Articuno, and Mega Kangaskhan. First thing I notice here is like, in this whole stat page, you have Wobbuffet, taking out Wobbuffet because that's a real niche pick. There's 3 red stats. One of them's speed, and then 2 of them special attack on physical mons. Like, these our base stat totals in general are like really high. And I know a lot of mons make up for their base stat totals, and so it's not exactly like a be all and end all, but I just think that like, even looking at this, the natural bulk this team has, when you think it's got mons like Dragapult, Thundy, Terrakion, Bulu, Tauros, Mega Kang, all that just hit really hard. So I really like that. Looking at our speed tiers to start, this almost makes the cut. I'm going to kind of give you a forgiveness because you have got the big speed tier of Dragapult. You've got Tauros as your 110, and then you've got like 108 in Terrakion. I would have loved to have seen like a mon. So these 2 are probably going to come almost every week. Terrakion's a menace. Really breaks those like steel types for Dragapult. And yeah, and also normal types. So I think that's a really good core. Jirachi round 2 was a little bit early, I feel like. Same with Thundy-T, but I mean, it works out. We've got some really strong hitters. And then like, even things like late Bulu and Mega Kang are super value. So yeah, I think speed tiers, we just get a pass on those for mine. Mainly because Dragapult is just such an oppressive speed tier, and like Terrakion, Thundy, Bulu, they're all like fantastic. Even Jirachi, like they're all amazing scarf options. Looking at our special breaking power, I think this is the part of the team that is the weakest in my opinion. You have Thundy, which fires off very strong special attacks. And then Dragapult I'll kind of group into that because you can run Modest if you want to run Special Pult most of the time. But outside of that, like Manaphy with no Tail Glow doesn't hit as hard. Really, like Articuno is a niche mon that still doesn't hit as hard. Like Special Jirachi is an okay set, but I feel like just from like when I say physical is run more often, that's just from my experience. Like I often see like because you want to be taking advantage of that Serene Grace by clicking like Iron Head or Body Slam to get the paras or something like that. So your special moves, while they might hit mons better and be like good in some matchups, like if you're tossing a coin and picking between one, you'll more often than not pick physical just for those like Serene Grace added effects. Physical breakers we're fantastic on, like Mega Kang, Bulu, Terrakion and Dragapult especially. Then you've got like Tauros hits really hard, Incineroar as well. It's just really, really good. And then Jirachi as well. So I think that's a big plus. We don't have the bulkiest of team. Like I know I said there's a lot of natural bulk, but there's not a lot of dedicated bulk, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Like if you think natural bulk, like looking at something like a mon like Terrakion, for example. Like this mon 91, 90, 90 is very good natural bulk and can live like a decent amount of hits. Like it might live a weakened super effective hit from something that's defensive to try and take it. But dedicated bulk, I'm looking at something like, we'll head back to Jimmy's team, like a Tangrowth, like a Donphan, like an Aloe, which are like you're going to be running with a lot of defensive EVs throughout the season. Which I think is a good and a bad thing for Aberforth, because you have a lot of mons that are potential like checks to threats, but whereas say you've got something like that raw damage output that I was talking about before with when I used PZ as an example, or something like an Urshifu you can use as an example. I think that's might be where we come unstuck. But I mean, you always do have the crutch Wobbuffet to try and like fall back on. Not that I really expect this mon to come to a game, but it's just nice to force prep. Looking at our pivots, I like the size of this column. Mainly because we got Articuno, Jirachi, Manaphy, Thundy, Incineroar, Dragapult. So like these 6 here, 6 out of our 11 have pivoting options, and then you've got like Jirachi, Thundy, and Dragapult, which are 3 of the mons that are going to be almost on the roster every week. Those are the ones that I think will be very nice to have. One last thing before I rate this team, our removal is a bit suspect. Articuno with boots is quite a reliable remover, but it just, because of its typing, it doesn't find its way onto the team very often, and forcing Thundy to defog when it's such a good Scarfer, such a good like agility or nasty plot sweeper, kind of hinders it a little bit. Same way you've got like rocks, like these 2 mons are so, Jirachi is so versatile and Terrakion's so good at what it does that forcing them to run rocks every week is, it's a bit of a hindrance to them. Like Terrakion can run rocks fine because you force a lot of switches, so you can click rocks on those switches, but clicking something like Swords Dance or getting off a big CC on like whatever, or like a Stone Edge, can kind of become more valuable in some matchups, and then it might just be as simple as like having the room for rocks means you can't fit a coverage move. So our hazard game, I feel like, is the downside of this team. And just I will quickly flick over, as I have been, to our tab here, and looking at it, we're a little bit flying weak, but then Thundy and Jirachi do okay. Yeah, there's no notable weaknesses other than a lack of a ground type, I feel like is a weird one. But then you've got Thundy as like an electric immunity, so it's kind of a thing, but that makes us a bit rock weak. Yeah. So what I think I'm going to give this team, I really do like it. I'm going to give this team a 7.5. Just because I like it, but I don't think it's objectively amazing. Just with that hazard game. We got Tails up next. Tails has the Tauntina, Necrozma, Infernape, Swampert, Zarude, Comfy Kamala, Toxtricity, Dracovish, Mega Aggron, and Trapinch. At first glance, this is a very interesting team because like these 3 I feel like is a really common sort of like set of mons to go with. Swampert's a beloved mon by many. Zarude I think is getting a lot more love than it once did. And then like this sort of second half is really sort of an interesting way. Comfy Kamala is this is a bit weird to me. I can understand because like you desperately need a removal. Toxtricity is an interesting one, considering that you really don't, like, you do have a really an offensive water, so like these two can kind of cover each other well, but it's a bit here we going. I love Mega Aggron. I think it's a really underrated mon, and I think it suits this team really well as just being that like big fat thing that can sit there. And when you combine that with something like a Swampert or a Zarude or like a Necrozma running like Spadef, EVs in a matchup, like the two of them can kind of just bounce off each other and check most things. And then Trapinch, it's a 1-point Trapinch, like there's not much to say. Looking at our speed tiers, first of all. Again, they're like Torn, Infernape, Zarude, I will kind of give a pass to, because like 108 is almost 110. It's good, not great. It's good because there is some very viable Scarf options here. You've got Infernape, you've got Zarude, you've got Toxtricity, you've got Dracovish. They all don't mind being Scarfed. Especially like Dracovish can be run Scarfed almost every week because of just how hard it hits. Looking at, like, we got some really nice physical breakers here, like Mega Aggron, Kamala, Zarude, Infernape, sort of. So it's got some decent physical breakers, not the most amazing. Mainly because like Kamala and Swampert are two of the mons that like have your big attack stats, but Swampert's probably not going to be run super offensive, and then Kamala's probably just not going to find its way onto the rosters most weeks. Especially we hit alright as well. Like we got that Infernape again. Torn and Necrozma do really good jobs for each other. Like these three here break really nice for each other. Just like the rock types and the steel types that Torn struggles with, Ape picks up really well. But if we look like from here down, it's kind of just Toxtricity that hits specially, which I think is a little bit of a downside to this team. But we will see how it goes. Again, taking those special hits could be an issue for this team. We have Comfy here, which can kind of do it, but like I think Comfy is a lot worse this gen, just because it struggles to do anything without hidden power against steel types. And then 51 HP, it kind of sort of makes this 110 Spadef a little bit worse. Necrozma can do it. You've got Swampert, you've got Zarude. But again, it's that like raw taking a hit power that I feel like this team misses. It has it in Aggron, like tenfold, but I would love to have just seen like that option Spadef, considering we aren't the most hyper offensive, deal damage very quickly kind of team. Okay, moving on to our pivots. Infernape, Torn, Comfy, Kamala, Zarude, Toxtricity, and Swampert. Like we have 7 very good pivots, and that's where this team shines. Looking at, let's just pick the mons that don't have pivots. We have Necrozma, we have Kamala, we have Dracovish, we have Mega Aggron. I'm not going to include Trapinch because Trapinch is a very niche pick. Looking at this, like Necrozma and Dracovish are the two of the mons that you want to bring in with that momentum. I clicked Kamala, I don't know why. Kamala has U-turn. It's Mega Aggron, Dracovish, and Necrozma are really the three that don't have it. I feel like there's one more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, no, there's only 3. Wow, that's really good. So you got 2 of the mons that you want to bring in with your momentum, and then Mega Aggron, which really doesn't care about being hard swapped into like physical attacks. So I think this is really where we shine. Removal, Torn can do it, but he doesn't want to have to do it. Comfy and Kamala, that's not the most amazing, but it's passable. And then rocks, we have good rockers here. Swampert and Mega Aggron, 2 of the most reliable stealth rockers in the format. Infernape and Necrozma are there as backup if you really need them. And then we come across to here, and it's not a bad one. Only having Mega Aggron as your normal resist is not the worst thing in the world. It just means like something like a Spec Swallow might prove a little bit hard for you if they do have like fighting or fire coverage or ground coverage or something like that from like a special normal type. But yeah, like it does a pretty good job all across the board. I think this is a very good example of sort of a middle of the road team for me. I personally would love to see the points from maybe like Comfy, Kamala, Toxtricity, Trapinch put into maybe like two like a really solid fairy type, and then like either a really solid electric, or maybe a normal, or like something like that, just to give this team one more like either threat or like one more real fat mon to pair with that aggron. So yeah, that's my like recommendation for improvements, but I think it's quite a solid team. So this team is going to get, looking at Aberforth's, I think this is actually an 8 out of 10, just because it's quite solid. But yeah, we're going to move on to Nala, just because I don't want to run this one very long. We've already been going 20 minutes and I've covered 3 teams. I like to try and keep it about 6 minutes a team. So Mega Scizor, Dragonite, Rotom Heat, Crocodile, Galarian Weezing, Chansey, Superior, Frostlass, Gothitelle, Klefki, and Palpitoad is Nala's team. First impressions is it's got like Mega Scizor and then a lot of like mid-tier mons, which can work for some and it can really not work for others. So we'll take a look and see how we're going. Speed tiers. This isn't amazing. Superior and Frostlass, 2 mons that are going to come to maybe half of your games this season, maybe not. So yeah, it's, especially with Superior being like walled by basically any grass resist that isn't weak to Dragon, unless you let it set up out of control. And then Frostlass just doesn't come to a lot of games. It comes to more now that it has Triple Axle and Poltergeist, so it can be like physical or special. But I just don't think that's the greatest speed control, especially when it's a big drop down to 92 as your next fastest. Like, if you think about it, like looking at, say, this, you bring this front 6, which is pretty good, or maybe swap one of them out for Gothitelle or Klefki, like your fastest mon is Crocodile. And if we look at something like, say, Aberforth's team here, like, we can bring an entire 6 realistically that outspeed that Crocodile. 7 mons even. So that's quite a downside for me. The next thing that I notice is this team lacks really a special attacker. Like a dedicated special attacker. You have Rotom Heat, but Rotom Heat likes to run that boots. Like, you really want to be running Nasty Plot if you're running like special attacks, so it's like, but then your only offensive move is Overheat, so you can't really like, yes, a little bit of a one and done kind of thing. Dragonite can do it, but Dragonite's been run a little more bulky these days, or like D-Dance. Gothitelle can do it, like trap something and set up, but that's not the most reliable one. And then Superior again with like its Leaf Storm boosting. So I think it's really lacking in a special breaker, but it does have a couple of physical breakers. Like Mega Scizor, Dragonite, Crocodile, like really good hit hard physical mons. But outside of that, we only have Frostlass here physically. So what I'm seeing from this team is we have a lot of middling mons, but we don't have, which something I find, and you see this in a lot of people that try and fill out their roster, is you just lack that real offensive presence that a lot of mons have in the higher tiers. Like if you think of like the 19, 18, 17 point tier on a standard dock, 90% of those mons are like real big hitters. You look at like round 1 picks, like you've got Urshifu, you've got Dragapult, you've got Torn, you've got Mega Scizor, we're going to flick to Sweaties like Deoxys Speed, Mega Gallade, Garchomp. They're all big hard hitters, and so you just kind of miss out on that when you don't take a few like properly high point mons. So that's probably my biggest quarrel with Nala's team so far. In terms of taking hits, like you take physical hits fairly well. And special hits, you've got like a decent amount of natural bulk, like Goth, Chansey, like you take special hits very well with Chansey. I don't really need to say anymore. Pivots, again, this is sort of where we're let down here. It's Mega Scizor, Rotom Heat, and Chansey. Chansey using Teleport means Chansey isn't using Wish, and mons like Rotom Heat, Galarian Weezing, even Crocodile and Goth really appreciate that Wish. So essentially, like in half of your matchups, you're probably going to want to run Wish Chansey. Essentially only having 2 pivots on your whole roster for half the season is just, it makes it quite hard to sort of mitigate for these low attacking stats. Hazard removal, we drafted all the hazard removal, like 6 removers out of 11, well, realistically out of 10, because Palpitoad, like this is a bit overkill for me. Sure, you have, and they're all like removers that can quite happily do it as well. Like Serp can run Defog pretty comfortably these days because it doesn't need the moves, because you run like Leaf Storm, Dragon Pulse, Synthesis, and then like Glare or maybe Defog or Sub. Like that last move is really open for you to run Synthesis. Klefki can do it because Priority is really nice. Rotom Heat and Galarian Wheezing, again, same thing with sort of Superior, they can afford the move slot. And then Boots Dragonite with like Heal Bell Defog is a really good set. We have a lot of hazards as well, and one of the things I would have liked to have seen is you have all this Defog, but then you also have Double Spikes and T-Spikes, so I would have loved to have seen some Rapid Spin, so that you can really like force your opponent to Defog, which is another way that you can mitigate for your offensive stats, is force them to give you a free turn in Defog, essentially, which might mean you can set up a Swords Dance with Scizor, a Dragon Dance with Dragonite, a Nasty Plot with Rotom, a free Leaf Storm with Serp, get a free switch into Goth and start Carmining. Like, there's a lot of ways you can do it, and forcing a Defog would have been one. Looking at our weakness and resistance chart real quick, I'm going to start trying to incorporate this a bit more. Yeah, so we're not overly weak to anything. I kind of expected that, given that it's a lot of mid-tier mons. Like, the type coverage is there, but sort of the stat coverage isn't. So yeah, personally, I'm not a huge fan of this team. I think, I don't want to be mean, but I think this is the worst one we've seen so far. Just comparing it to Jimmy's, like, so I'm going to give this one, I'm going to give Nala just to leave me some room in case there are some other bad teams. I'm going to go 4.5 out of 10. We're going to move on to Sweaty's team. Sweaty has Deoxys Speed, Gliscor, Conkeldurr, Raikou, Mega Gyarados, Florges, Decidueye, Stack Attacker, Salamence, Muk, Pyro, Pinsir. So another person that has filled out their roster. So we'll see if has the same issue of like a lot of middling mons. First things first, speed tiers. This gets a big check. We have exactly what I asked for. 2 mons above 110 that are going to come most weeks. Raikou and Dio are going to find their way into the roster most weeks. And then we have like Pyro, Gliscor, Salamence. Like, it steps down a little bit. I would have loved to have seen a mon of this speed tier that you're probably going to bring a little more often than Pyro. And then looking first with physical breakers, like probably ignoring Pinsir because it's not going to be coming for like its physical attack presence. Mega Gyarados, Conkeldurr, Stack Attacker, Salamence, like that, even Decidueye, like they all hit very hard. And especially you have Raikou, I'm not counting Florges, Raikou, Mence, Pyro, and then I'll count Deoxys because, as I said in yesterday's video, 95 special attack as Timid is sort of the same as like, 95 when you can run Modest is about the same as like 108, I feel like, Timid, so like it comes up here sort of like on par with this, like almost with the Raikou Salamence range, so you hit decently hard. Spadef wise, like we take hits fairly well. We've got a lot of mons with natural bulk and like the Muk, the Decidueye, the Raikou, but then you've got like some dedicated bulk in like Gyarados and Florges. And then again we take physical hits fairly well. One thing I am saying in terms of the mons themselves, I feel like these 3 down here are a bit wasted. And then Florges I really don't think is a good fairy type. It suffers the same syndrome that Comfey does, in that it's got the I can't touch a steel type syndrome. So if you have, like, let's say Nala's Mega Scizor. Sweaty sends out Florges, there is nothing other than doubling out that Sweaty can do to punish Nala for going straight into the Scizor, which I think is quite a downside for your fairy type when you allow in a mon for free most of the time, and Steel's such an important type that everyone's going to have one. So looking into our sort of our pivoting, that's what we do next. It's Gliscor, Decidueye, Raikou, and I guess Deoxys Speed. I don't really like counting Teleport on Dio because you just have so many more options that you can like run on Deoxys that it rarely ever finds room for Teleport. So again, only having 3 out of your 12 is a bit like that's not really amazing in my point of view, especially when you've got mons like Mega Gyarados, Stack Attacker, and Conkeldurr that you really want to be getting in for free, essentially, because like Conk has decent bulk, but it's got nowhere to heal and it's a bit slow, so it doesn't want you taking too many hits. Same with Stack Attacker, like it can do things, but it doesn't want to be taking hits. Removal, once again, we've got like a bit overkill on the removal. 5 removers. When you've got like a few, like Florges and Decidueye are really reliable. Gliscor can do it. Conkeldurr and Salamence. I don't think you need that many. Rockers, once again, like Gliscor, Stack Attacker, Pinsir, and then Dio with Rocks and Spikes. So again, that's a lot of hazard setting there, which could have maybe done with like potentially one less to shore up the thing. One thing I will say is a lot of people talk about the Fairy Dragon Steel Core, and I think that core is not a be-all end-all, but I think it's a great place to really look at a draft. If we look at it here, we have Florges, Stack Attacker, Salamence. Florges, I've said why I don't like that mon already. Stack Attacker is not really what you'd call a traditional steel. It doesn't take hits amazingly well being rock steel because it's just weak to so many types. Like one thing I'll come across here, we can go to the Stack Attacker part of this, what you call it, and then we're weak to 1, 2, 3, 4. We're weak to 4 types, 2 of them quads. We have a few resists through here, but it's lowish, like not lowish special defense, but like terrible speed and bad HP with no recovery means it's not the most reliable steel type. So one thing that Sweaty has is he has the right types and like decent speed tiers, but I just don't think they're very good Pokemon in general. So I think we're better than Noah. Comparing this to Jimmy, I don't think we're quite as good as Jimmy. Because I would rather bad hazards than like just bad Pokemon. So I think we're gonna go a 5.5 for Sweaty. It's just not the most amazing team in my opinion. We're gonna go to Jamal next. Jamal has Mega Glade, Aegislash, Hydreigon, Primarina, Nidoqueen, Snorlax, Uxie, Regieleki, Moltres, and Grottle. And one thing that if people watched yesterday's power rankings, I'm not sure how many did, they would have heard me harp on about how like getting mons for good value at later points in the draft. And I feel like that's what Jamal's really done here. Like round 3 Hydra, Primanito is round 4s and 5s, Snorlax round 6, like you've got Moltres down here at round 9. I think that's great value picks. And looking at here, I don't think there's an objectively bad Pokemon on this roster. That's the first thing that really strikes me. We will see if they gel together as well as I initially think. But yeah, like even Regieleki is probably the least like quote unquote good Pokemon on this team. But there's so many other ones that it comes when it's got a good matchup and it doesn't mind sitting on the bench because there's plenty of other things that are there ready to take its place. Speed tiers wise, you don't quite get a pass. Regieleki and Mega Glade, I would have loved to see one more fast mon. And I feel like that's a theme I can say for a lot of rosters. Just because Mega Glade can't be scarfed, so you don't pressure those like base 100 plus scarfers unless you bring Regieleki. And if they have a really reliable Regieleki answer, then you kind of don't pressure those scarfers at all. Unless, like, because even though you have Hydreigon, which is a really nice scarf option, you don't pressure the mons that are faster than this. And I feel like there's a lot of base 100 mons or over that don't mind being scarfed. So that's my first initial like qualm with this team. Physical breakers. We have Mega Glade, we have Snorlax, and to an extent Primarina. Oh, and Aegislash. So I'm forgetting Aegislash. Just because its shield form default loads into my dock. Yeah, so that we do it really well. Like Mega Glade, what does Mega Glade hate? It's bulky psychic types. What are Aegislash and Hydreigon love doing? Destroying bulky psychic types. Aegislash hates ground types. Well, you've got Primarina, which can break them into oblivion, and Hydreigon, which has levitate. Hydra hates fairies. Well, you've got Aegislash and Nidoqueen to take care of fairies. I think you're getting the drift. Like, Primarina doesn't like electric types at all, or poison types. Nidoqueen covers both. Like, it's very much, it's like Jamal picked a mon, and then the next pick or two were like, okay, what doesn't this mon like? Let me find an answer for it. So yeah, because it's like, you've even got Snorlax Aegislash work really well together, because Snorlax tanks hits from almost any type that isn't fighting, and Aegislash and even Uxie, which is there, just sort of eat fighting types. Moltres really eats fighting types. Yeah, it's, I think, in terms of type synergy, really well. And then we got some quite nice special attackers: Nidoqueen, Primarina, and Hydreigon. And then you got Moltres and Regieleki I'll throw in there as well, just because of Transistor, plus the ability to go Modest almost all the time is really nice. And then just, yeah, we have some really nice natural and dedicated bulk here. And I think it's just a really good set of mons. In terms of our pivots, we have Moltres, Hydreigon, Uxie, Regieleki, and Primarina. So we got 5 out of our 10 mons. And I can really say 5 out of 9 because Grotle isn't coming a lot of the time. Let's look at the Pokemon that don't have it. Yes, I'm not counting Mega Gallade. You're never running Teleport Lade. You just don't have the move slots for it. We got Lade, Aegislash, Nidoqueen, Snorlax. I think that's it. Yeah. Yeah, so those 4 mons, all big hitters, all mons that, like, they're the ones that you want to be bringing in with your momentum, which is, like, great. I really like this team. Weakness and resistance chart is the last thing I'll look at, just to make sure I haven't missed anything. The only thing I'll say is, like Aegislash being your only normal resist is kind of a bit, like, here or there, but I feel like it's a pretty good one. Considering you have Snorlax as well, which is one of the best normal types you're trying to resist. Yeah, honestly, there's not a lot I can say to fault this team. I think it's a really good team. Like, this is a team that, like, if you set out to me and told me someone had got round 5 Nidoqueen, I would not have expected that from the top division. Round 5 Nidoqueen into round 6 Snorlax, and then round 9 Moltres. Like, I think that's just value upon value, and this so far is my pick to win the league. This team is just straight up a 9 out of 10. And I think it'll take some beating. I think it'll take some beating to do it. And the only reason this isn't a 10 out of 10 is because we have, like, we have still 11 rosters, 2, 4, 6, 8. We have 10 rosters to go. And there's a chance that everyone in this division forgot how to draft, and we might have a better one. But yeah, we're going to move on. We got Brian now. Brian has a team of Chomp, Celesteela, Slowbro, Cinderace, Thundy-Eye, Amoonguss, Tapu Lele, Stunfisk, Scrafty, and Mega Glalie. Sorry. Mega Glalie is a really interesting one. You don't see it drafted a lot, but it's, like, it hits hard. I think it has Refrigerate, does it? Am I just being crazy? Yeah, it does. Refrigerate from, like, these offenses, like, it hits hard. And base 100 speed isn't the worst, it's an ice type, so, like, that's kind of cool that someone's drafting it. You tick finally, someone that ticks the speed tier box. We have 2 mons over base 110 that are going to come almost every week, and then we step down quite nicely. 102, 95, we got 100, and then from there it's a bit dire. But yeah, so we Chomp, Sally, Slowbro, Cinderace, like, they're all, once again here, the mons that I would say, quote unquote, like, these mons here are, like, these 4 are wildly considered, like, quite good mons. Scrafty is really great value for a low point mon. Stunfisk, not bad for a second, although it's not bad, but I kind of don't really understand the need for Stunfisk, because you've already got Chomp and Thundy, so, like, you've got a really good electric and a really good ground that are gonna come most weeks. So, like, adding to that, especially adding an ice weakness, considering your steel doesn't resist it, like Mega Glalie and Slowbro being your only ice resists, well, and Cinderace, I guess, is gonna make something like your Kyurem or your Weavile match up a little bit hard. But yeah, it's not the worst. Yeah, one thing, let's move on to special attackers. We have some great special hitters. Lele and Thundy hit quite hard. Celesteela, even in a pinch, you can run like offensive Meteor Beam, and then Mega Glalie, which, yeah, hits kind of like a truck. Physical-wise, it's not as strong. Like, you got Chomp, you got Cinderace, and then Mega Glalie's probably going to be physical more often than not. But you've still got a good amount of breakers. Like, we got probably, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mons that could break. Maybe Cinderace is a bit more of a pivot and a cleaner. But yeah, great. Some nice bulk here. You've obviously got Slowbro, Selly, Amoonguss, Tapu Lele, Stunfisk, Scrafty, like a lot of mons that can be run bulky. Same on the physical side, like Scrafty, Slowbro, Celesteela, Amoonguss. Quite nice. Looking at our pivots. Our pivots are Thundy, Cinderace, and Slowbro. So like it's... I would have maybe liked one more just because you've got like the Chomp, like even the Thundy, the Mega Glalie, the Lele, that all want to be brought in without taking a hit first. So I would have liked one more over here. Same with removal. Yes, Court Change is a crutch you can fall on, because especially Boot Cinderace can fall on the Court Change crutch quite nicely, because if they set up hazards, you can come in without being affected by those hazards, and then just send them all over there. So I think it's a good crutch to fall on, but I don't think it should be the only one that you do. And then Thundy Eye is like, it loves clicking attacks and like Nasty Plot and like doing other like Thunder Wave, if I can speak, like prankster shenanigans, a bit more than it does defogging. Same with your rockers, like Chomp, Stunfisk, Mega Glalie. I see why Stunfisk is here now, because otherwise there was no rocker and you needed it, but I feel like a better second rocker. And then Mega Glalie really doesn't want to click spikes because Ice is one of the best offensive moves, and you could just be clicking like Double Edge off 120 attack and deleting something instead. So I feel like this whole column, like these 3 columns here, are where this team is let down the most. Excuse me. We have our weakness and resistances chart, my favorite thing. That's what I thought. Scrafty is our only ghost resist. That's terrifying. The Gengar matchup is going to be horrible for Brian here. Our only normal resist is Celesteela, which again, it leaves you kind of a bit open to like Curse Lax or mons like that. Same with Scrafty being our only dark type resist. So I said that your Weavile matchup was going to be hard. It just got a lot harder. Yeah, so weak to those common types, like not common types, but weak to like some very good offensive types. Not having the greatest momentum or hazard game, I think really drags this team down. And I'm going to give this team because it has just generally like good Pokemon, I'm going to give this team a 6.5 out of 10. Just because it's decent. We're going to move on. We're going to have Granky's team here. Granky has Koko, Galarian Slowking, Zygarde, Mega Blastoise, Mandibuzz, Scolipede, Cobalion, Celebi, Alolan Raichu, Colossal, Bibarel, and Emolga. Yes, so another roster filler. And someone that's actually broken my pivots column, because you can't see it, but down under this Alolan Raichu it keeps going. It only goes one more because Mega Blastoise flip turn, but yeah, there's a lot. Speed tiers, we get a check. We have 3 mons over because these 2 are probably not going to be coming every week, but one of them most likely will. But then you got Koko, which is really reliable. Galarian Slowking, one thing I will say is like it's one of the better Koko checks, and you've drafted it with Koko, so that's pretty good. Apart from like the Nidos, that is. Special attackers. Special attackers. It's kind of Mega Blastoise, Galacking, and then like Celebi and Koko can do it, but they're not like out and out breakers. Just like Cobalion can Calm Mind up. And then physical attackers, it's kind of Koko or bust. Well, I should say Koko or setup, because Zygarde, Scolipede, Cobalion, Bibarel even, like, probably shouldn't be counting that. They can all set up to like deal a lot of damage physically, but it takes that extra turn. So yeah, it doesn't have that like immediate damage pressure, in my opinion. Looking at Spidef stats, like Galarking is one of the better Spidef mons. You've got like Celebi, Mandibuzz even. Like, you've got some really good dedicated bulk here. And then physically you have some great dedicated bulk in the likes of Celebi, Mandibuzz, and then like Galarian Slowking is decent. But then you have like great natural bulk in Blastoise, Zygarde, Cobalion, Colossal. Quite good. So, looking at, first and foremost, our pivots column, we have Celebi, Emolga, Mandibuzz, Koko, Alolan Raichu, Cobalion, and Mega Blastoise as our pivots. I'm ignoring the Baton Pass just because, as I've said before, I don't think it's great. Also, Scolipede gets Baton Pass, which is the only mon in those three that doesn't get any other momentum, but Stat Pass is banned, and you're not going to be wanting to run like Poison Touch Scolipede. So 7 momentum mons is very good. Our removal here, once again, we got a bit overkill. Megastoise, Koko, Mandibuzz, Emolga, Colossal. Mandibuzz is one of those mons that you can almost afford to draft a little bit less removal in because it's just so reliable as coming in and getting that defog off. And same with Mega Blastoise. Like, I used to really not like Mega Blastoise being a remover, but now that Rapid Spin gives you +1 speed, removing is almost like you setting up and like being able to deal more damage. So yeah, I think like this is a little bit overkill. We also have double spike setter, T-spikes, and then 4 rockers, maybe 3. Bibarel's not the greatest. Colossal, like the hazard game is really strong. Like, it's almost like Granky looked at these 3 columns that I have here and was like, that's what I'm drafting around. One thing I want to double check is our weakness and resistance, because we have because there's a few mons here that are generally a little weak to others, like specific types. For example, like Cobalion. Drafting Cobalion usually means you're a bit weak to Fairy and a bit weak to Flying. But we've actually got like the Alolan Raichu, the Colossal, the Emolga, and the Koko to mitigate those. Oh, also I forgot the other speed star. Completely forgot. Surge Surfer Alolan Raichu. That thing goes very fast, and with a nasty plot like that's quite a nice pickup. Yeah, I don't really know how I feel about this team. I think this team is better than Brian's. But looking at it now, I kind of think I'm going to say it's on par with Aberforth's team, just because lacking that immediate physical breaking power and then really special breaking power outside Megastoise, because Galarian Slowking is probably going to be run defensive more often than not, just to take those fairy hits, because without it's like Colossal or Scolipede, which is a bit suspect. So I think this team is going to be 7.5 out of 10. It's really good, but it's just maybe take like these 3 here, and then like maybe, I don't know, upgrade, like just maybe pull these into like something just dealing damage a bit more, like straight out the gate. But yeah, we're going to move on to our man TCK, who has a team of Landorus, Greninja, Heatran, Buzzwole, Blastoise, Rotomo, Mesprit, Mega Aero, Ordino, Clefairy, and Galarian Corsola. Quite an interesting team. Right off the bat, we ticked the speed tier column. We got 2 mons that are over 110 that will going to be coming most weeks. I would have liked to have seen like it step down a little bit more though. Like, it's a pretty big gap from 122 to 101, and then like a decent gap from 101 to 86. And we have 77, 78, 79, 80, like 4 of these, well, even 5 of these mons all within 9 points of each other. So it kind of means that if your opponent's creeping Heatran, they might as well creep Rotomo, because it only takes like 36 more EVs, I think, which is a bit of a downside in my opinion. Just having like probably half of your team easily crept like that is not exactly what you want. But looking at our physical breaking power, Mega Aero and Buzzwole do it really well, and then Lando often goes mixed, but usually a bit more special, just because like sheer force boosted moves are generally better specially. So it's like it does a decent job. Specially wise, we have Tran, Gren, and Lando. Like, these 3 dish out some really big special hits. And then like Rotom or Mesprit can do in a pinch as well. Probably not the best. Like the one thing I see is you look at like Motom, Ordino, Clefairy, Corsola, Mesprit. Like these 5 are pretty defensive, and like it looks sort of negative at first, but on paper it really supports like these top 4 with Mega Arrow. Also, can we talk about this like round 8 Mega Arrow? Like that's such good value. Like, Mega Arrow should be going in the first 3 rounds, almost every draft, just because it's so good. Like, I took a really late Mega, and I would have loved if Mega Aerodactyl was there for me. Yeah, moving on to, like, quickly mention that it has a lot of natural bulk. Like, we know that Mesprit, Ordino, Galarian, Corsola, Heatran, like, Blastoise, Rotom, they can all take hits fairly well. Moving on to our pivots, we have Mesprit, Gren, Lando, Rotom, Clefairy and Blastoise. So we got 5 out of our 11 mons can run pivoting, and then you've got Ordino, which has regen, which like kind of half counts. But yeah, so that's quite a good pivoting column. I like that. I also like that the Clefairy has teleport, so you can guarantee get this Lando in for free, or you can get this Gran or this Buzzwole or Mega Arrow in. Removal-wise, we're pretty decent. Even though Lando, Mega Arrow really don't want to run it. Landorus especially, like, please never click Defog with Lando, because there's just... with the amount of damage that, like, Life Orb Sheer Force Lando does, there's always something better that you can do than click Defog, in my opinion. So, but Rotom and Blastoise are pretty reliable. Also, can we just appreciate that there are 6 Stealth Rockers on this team, which is kind of overkill. But we did have a spinner drafted with like spike stack potential, so that's always something that I like to see. Yeah, so it's looks pretty well rounded. Looking at our weaknesses and resistances, we do not have a rock resist. This is one of the biggest things that I saw when looking at this. Our ground type is part flying, our steel type is part fire, and our fighting type is part bug. And our rock type is part flying as well. So something like that Terrakion that we saw earlier is really going to hurt. Or a Nihilego if that got drafted. Normally I'd say Mega Arrow, but that's on this team. So that's like one notably weak point for this team. The other thing I will say is we only have Heatran as a Fairy Resist. So in the days of Gen 7, I'd say that's horrible because your Fairy runs HP Ground. It's a little less bad nowadays because that isn't a thing, but it's still not amazing. It just means that if your opponent has a really strong Fairy type, if that Fairy type gets Focus Blast, which a good amount of them do, or like something along those lines, it can be quite hard to play around. But other than that, I think it does a fairly good job of like covering your type resistances, but I don't know. I feel like this is slightly worse than the last couple of teams we've seen, or the last team we saw. I'm gonna just double check back to Brian. Yeah, just Brian having like no real hazard setters, removals, or pivots puts him just a little bit below this. So I'm gonna give TCK a 7 out of 10 for this draft. Moving on, we've got Robert. Or I feel like I should say it in an American accent, be like Robert. Really do that. Please never remind me that I said that like that again. We have Mega Mawile, Zapdos, Urshifu Rapid Strike, Hooper Unbound, Dugtrio, Deoxys Defense, Toxapex, Talonflame, Quilladin, Glaceon, Regigigas. Quite an interesting team off the bat. Yeah, it's a few mons that I really wouldn't normally think to see together. Like Quilladin, Glaceon, Regigigas, Dugtrio, Hooper Unbound are all mons that really don't get drafted very often. Like, Regigigas gets drafted a lot more these days because this bulk now has, like, Toxic Protect, Sub, and then you can get to your 160 attack pretty soon. But yeah, looking at our speed tiers, that's always a good place to start. Talonflame and Dugtrio are good, but then you step down to Zapdos and Regigigas, and then Urshifu Rapid, so that's, in my opinion, that's pretty bad speed tiers, because there's not often that you're going to be bringing both Dugtrio and Talonflame. Dugtrio is a great speed tier because it traps things that are fast, But Dugtrio is really good at trapping like ground types and steel types, and you kind of just already deal with them with Urshifu. So yeah, I don't really understand the need for Dugtrio on this team. I can understand like maybe trapping steel types for Mega Mawile. Oh, sorry, I meant trapping rock types, not ground types. But yeah, it's just, yeah, it's a bit weird to me. It doesn't feel very needed. Looking at our breakers though, like you have Urshifu and Hooper, which hit very hard, and Mega Mawile. So like physically, you dish out that raw damage. Yes, Regigigas has a big attack stat, but you've got to wait 5 turns to get to it. So it's like, especially though, it's a bit all or nothing here. Like you have Zapdos, Hooper, and Glaceon, like kind of when it comes to its 1 game a season that can hit specially. But outside of that, it's really like you're in the 70s and 60s. So it's, unless your mon is built to handle one of these two, it doesn't really need any special defense stats, because Urshifu and Mawile aren't running special, neither is Dugtrio. Toxapex isn't hitting very hard. Also, I just noticed, that's like a round 7 Toxapex. That's very late. Talonflame could maybe, and then like Deoxys could like nasty plot. But yeah, it's not amazing. Taking special hits like Deoxys defense Toxapex, this is what I call dedicated bulk. It's quite interesting. Looking at our pivoting options, pivots with this many breakers are super important. We got Zapdos, Talonflame, Urshifu, and Deoxys. So we got 4 out of our 11 mons that want to run it. So it's not the worst, not the best. It does do okay. Teleport DOD into Mega Mawile, I really like. Into Hooper Unbound, I really like. Yeah, it's quite good. One thing I do notice is that your Dark type doesn't resist Dark. It doesn't resist Ghost. You've got a really good Ghost resist here in Regigigas, but your Dark type is your Dark resist to Mega Mawile and Urshifu. Neither of them really love taking hits, especially pre-Mega. Mawile is quite frail, and then especially Urshifu is also quite frail. So that's one thing that I do notice. Moving on over here, we have Hazard Removal, Zapdos, Talonflame. That's a bit light. And one thing I will say is you don't have a Rapid Spinner when you have like two really good spikers. Quilladin is almost a dedicated spiker on this team. So you're kind of accepting hazards if you want to like really stack your opponent. And I think hazard stack plus Hooper plus Mawile plus Urshifu is a really good way to win games. Rocks wise, so we have like good hazard setters. I would love maybe like a spinner in here would make this team like really, really gel. We come over here once again. Our only dragon resist is Mawile, so a lot of the dragons that have Mystical Fire or access to Earthquake are going to be a problem for this team. Something like a Latios, I see, like you kind of have to build your Deoxys to handle Latios with this team. And then something else. Yeah, so our only Ghost resist is Regigigas, and our only Dark resists, as we spoke about, were the two mons that really don't want to take hits. Our only normal resist is also Mega Mawile, so that really puts a lot of pressure on Mawile to take hits, when that's the last thing you want to pressure your Mawile into doing. Yeah, so I'm not a huge fan of this team. It's something a bit different, and I do like that Robert has tried to draft something different, but honestly, I think it's going to be a... Let's have a look at Sweaty's team to compare. I honestly think it's a bit worse than this team. Yeah, I just think it's a bit worse, so I think it's going to be a 5 out of 10 for Robert. 5 out of 10. Yeah, we're going to move on pretty swiftly from this one to TCMTL. I assume that stands for something, because that really doesn't roll off the tongue well. But yeah, feel free to let me know. But we got Lando T, Rotom Wash, Kartana, Sylveon, Arcanine, Bronzong, Mega Beedrill, Bishop, Galarian, Darmanitan, and Xatu. another interesting team. Like round 3 Kartana is really soon. The Mega Beedrill, the Galarian Darmanitan. It's like we just wanted to fill this column with as much green as possible. Like 145, 181, 150, 140, 125, 110. It's a lot of physical breakers. And then you look at your special attackers, and it's... well, where are they? You have Rotom and Sylveon, which more often than not want to run defensive sets. Rotom Wash is probably the Rotom that wants to be offensive most out of all of them. You can run Arcanine especially, but again, like, I feel like Rotom, Sylveon, Arcanine is the backbone defensively of this team, with like Bronzong in there too. And then it's like Xatu. So I almost think that if you turned up with no Spec Def investment versus this team, you could have a good time. We're looking at our speed tiers again. Look, at 109 and 145, I'll give you the pass, just because you have like Darm and Lando and Rotom, which are like excellent Scarf Mons. But yeah, so that's kind of the thing. What I see here is I feel like this is almost a hyper offense team, and that's kind of backed up by this. You have Mega B, G-Darm, Lando, Rotom Wash as like a big aggressive U-turn core, Volt turn core, and then Arcanine and Xatu, and then like even Sylveon. Like normally I don't count Baton Pass, but on a team like this, I feel like Sylveon could maybe make room for it, as a way to like get those mons in. In terms of removal, B never wants to remove, Kartana never wants to remove, so it's kind of like these three. Xatu is a Magic Bounce mon, so that's always nice to have, and then Wash Tom does it pretty reliable. Lando does it in a pinch. Bronzong, Bishop, and Lando are your rockers, with Mega B having T-Spikes. That's not terrible. One thing I will say is, I've just noticed, is we have 3 Steel types on this team. So I gather that's why there's a Flash Fire Arcanine here, because otherwise you kind of just lose to Fire type attacks. Yeah, so I'm actually just bringing that up. I want to look at our weakness and resistance chart here, because I feel like there's like Bishop being your only Ghost resist, and one of 2 Dark resist. Like Sylveon does a very good job being a Dark resist. Ground type moves, however, if Lando, Bronzong, or Xatu, like Xatu's probably not going to be there. Like, who is that had the Zygarde? Because this is the game you want to bring Zygarde to. Because Thousand Arrows doesn't have a resist. Your 2 water resists, one of them has base, let me just see, 31 Spadef. So your Scald resist with this team, on a team that's very physical, is only Rotom Wash. That's a big problem. Something like really any water type that wants to click Scald. If it packs Toxic, or like a way to just chip down Rotom a little bit, you can throw off Scalds very easily, and that's where Heal Bell Sylveon's going to have to come in, because like if you a burnt Lando, or a burnt Kartana, or a burnt Beedrill, or a burnt Galarian Darmanitan, just make the mons kind of useless. So yeah, that's an important thing, and we'll just click back. Did I miss anything else? Not really. Like yeah, we're a bit Fire Weak, but we have that Arcanine and that Rotom, so that's like kind of covers for it, because I feel like they have to come most weeks. This is another very interesting team. I feel like this is slightly better than Roberts, just because it has like good mons that can just deal out damage. This is the click the button.exe team. This is okay, I'm bringing a lot of mons, I'm going to click buttons, and you're going to find a way to try and like handle them. And I can kind of see that, but then at the same time, like triple steel, with like just a like triple steel, double flying, is just a weird way to execute it. So I'm going to give this team a 5.5 out of 10. Actually, we can go back to Sweaty's team, which... no, I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. Where are we? Yes, we're up here. I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. Just because I feel like it's slightly better. I feel like I was a bit too harsh early on, which is why these guys are all getting lower scores. This is just me giving a score out of 10 as a way to rate them, not being like, compared to yesterday, there were a lot of 7s and that these teams are all trash by comparison. No, I just, like, for example, Jimmy and Aberforth and Tails early on probably should have been ranked a bit higher, so then they're just filtering down effect happens. But powering on, we've crossed the hour mark. We're at Beardy. Beardy has Mega Diancie, Victini, Slowking, Heliolisk, Vespiquen. Is that... Can we just stop? Is that a round 5 Vespiquen? Yeah, okay, moving on. We've got Flagon, Venusaur, Torkoal, Skarmory, Obstagoon, Trevenant, Ribombee. Surely this has to be like... I feel like there has to have been some grace transactions made, because there's no way you pick round 4 Heliolisk, round 5 Vespiquen, round 6 Flagon, and then you've got like Skarmory down here. This is very strange. Speed tier wise, you kind of pass, because like this 109 is basically a 110. So you have 3 mons above 110 when 2 of them aren't going to be coming every week. Yeah, so that does that okay. In terms of physical attackers, like Diancie, yes, can go mixed, and physical Diancie is now more of a set. But you do really have Victini, Obstagoon, and like kind of Flagon. So yeah, we're a little bit lacking on our raw power here in terms of physical, and same with special. Like in terms of offensive stats, there are 3 green stats, and 2 of them belong to the same mon, and one of them is a Trevenant. One of them belongs to a Trevenant. So, yeah, we lack a little bit on dishing out raw power. We lack a little bit on dedicated bulk. Because we have the Slowking, and then, like, specially we don't have much. We do have Torkoal Skarmory here, but, like, Torkoal I don't love because it doesn't have the greatest HP stat. It doesn't get any recovery. And, yeah, so it just doesn't take hits overly well. Yeah, so that's what I think there. The other thing I will say is Vespiquen, like Ribombee, Trevenant, like even Obstagoon and Heliolisk, to example, just aren't really top tier mons. Like most teams you think about, they've got probably like 4 mons that really stand out. Like I can pick one at random here. Like we'll pick Jamal's team. Actually, I've just picked the best team. We'll pick Granky's team, because this is like a middle of the road. You have Coco, you have Galar King, you have Blastoise, Zygarde, Mandibuzz. Like, they're all very good teams. We come back here to Beardy. Beardy has Diancie, Victini, and like Slowking. That's kind of it. Yeah, so this is kind of another one of those, we filled out our roster, and that's 12 mons without like a real shitter in there, like, because Trevenant's still worth a few points. Honestly, I think we need to just like sort of look for some just high tier options, just as a way to fill this team out. We do have a good amount of pivots, and if we look at them, we've got Flagon, Vespiquen, Victini, Heliolisk, Ribombee, Obstagoon, and Slowking. So we've got 7 out of the 12 mons have pivots, which is really going to help, because you need to get Mega Diancie and Victini in to do the damage for this team. You do have Venusaur and Sun, which I guess kind of counts, which I glossed over earlier, but I just don't think like a 2-mon Sun core with, like, I guess you have Victini there, is really just worth it in singles draft. It just doesn't feel like the most amazing thing. Like, you could have cut out these 2 and cut out like Trevenant B, and maybe like the Vespiquen, and like that's 5 mons that I've listed there, and looked at like 2 or 3 really quality like top tier Pokemon, or like upgrading a few into like some really top tier stuff that's threatening for your opponent. Skarmory, Flagon, Vespiquen, Ribombee, and Torkoal, like that's decent removal. Skarmory does it pretty nice. You've got the spike stacking ability of Skarmory with the Rapid Spin and Torkoal. I do like that. You've also got Webs plus Rapid Spin. One thing I will like, I do like Rapid Spin, because a lot of people will draft like spikes, sticky webs, toxic spikes, and then like a couple of good stealth rocks users, and then only have defog. So it's like, well, you're kind of accepting that you're going to get hazards set up on your side while you're stacking your opponent. So it's like, that's one thing I will say. Again, Skarmory sets up Mega Diancie, Torkoal, Ribombee, like all pretty decent hazard setters. Going to our weaknesses and our resistances. This, like, it does a pretty good job apart from rock, like Flagon being your only rock type. Terrakion is salivating looking at this team, because not only are you slow, you're weak to rock types. Yeah, it's not amazing, Yeah, other than that, like, it's decent coverage. But I just don't think this team, like, does a good job of being, like, overly threatening. And I gave TCMTL a 6 out of 10. I feel like this is a 5.5 kind of team. Just because, like, for the reasons that I've stated here. It does have good pivots, but it's just not a lot for those pivots to go into. So yeah, it will be interesting. Like, a lot of these mid-tier teams, I'm really interested to see how they're piloted, because as always, I rank the teams based on the team, not on how good the team that team is for the coach. God, I'm losing my voice today. Don't record 2 of these in one day, please. Glop is up next. Everyone loves Glop. He is one of the nicest guys in the community, and it is a odd season, so they're expecting another win from him. And let's have a look at the team that he's chosen to try and do that with. We have Mew, Clefable, Excadrill, Keldeo, Silvally, Mega Pidgeot, Galarian Slowbro, Tyranitar, and Chestnut. So yeah, it's off the bat, there's not really a bad Pokemon here. He has gone to draft 9 Mons, which means he's gone real top heavy. And I like to see the Silvally on those top heavy teams, because when you're drafting 9 Pokemon, I'll show you over here, like, I have this list of, like, what types you have available to stab. You're missing quite a few, like fire, electric, ice, ghost are really good offensive types, so you can slap a Silvally on there, and then you're, like, missing dragon as well. Sorry, I'll just make it so you guys can see. They're really good, like, offensive types, with dragon being defensive. So Silvally, but you'll probably only need one of them per matchup, so, like, that's where Silvally comes in, and I think it's really nice. But yeah, so looking at our speed tiers, Pidge and Keldeo are probably going to come every game, and then you have Drill and Sand, so you get a pass here, Glop. I was a bit worried for a sec. Looking at it here, like, we have a lot of natural bulk. We got the Mew, we got the Clefable, we've got T-Tar and Sand is really fat. Like, it's not the most amazing, but it's decent. Looking at our physical bulk, though, like Chestnut, T-Tar, Galabro, Clefable again, Mew. So they're really quite good. We have some nice breakers, like some decent physical breakers. It's kind of just your Sand Core that does physical damage. Like, and if you want to, like, run DD or SD Mew or something like that, or like Chestnut. So I feel like that's kind of a letdown. We do have some great special breakers, like Keldeo Mega Pidge. You have, like, that's a really nice core, because Mega Pidgeot I love, because you just click the Hurricane button and watch things die. And watching things die is a very fun pastime in Pokemon. And the thing that Mega Pidgeot really hates is, like, steel types and rock types, and then you have Drill Keldeo to back that up. So I think he's done really well in, like, pairing his breakers with things that break the types that they're stuck with. Like, for example, grass types on Excadrill, you've got the Mega Pidgeot, which fires off, like, no guard boosted Hurricanes from 135 special attack, which is phenomenal. And then, of course, like, we can't just understate the fact that Mew can do whatever this team needs. Yeah, so looking at our pivots, I like the side of this, but remember, we must take out the fact that Mew has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pivoting options. So we take 4 of them off, and we can just cancel. So we still meet to, like, down here. Silvally has 2, so we can, like, chop that one off as well. So we actually have 6 pivoting options. We have Clefable, Keldeo, Mew, Silvally, and Mega Pidgeot. That's really good. When you got 5 out of your 9 Mons, and the ones that don't have it are, like, Galabro, Chestnut, Excadrill, T-Tar. Excadrill is one of the Mons you want to get in. Galabro, you don't really mind about hard switching that thing in, same with Chestnut. T-Tar, you'd obviously like a way to get that thing in for free, and yeah, I really like it. Removal, we have great removal. We're ignoring Mew from removal and hazards, because Mew running hazards or removal is like a waste of Mew, in my opinion. Silvally, Excadrill, Mega Pidge are all quite reliable removers. Silvally, if you're running a defensive set, can often fit Defog on there. Excadrill, well, as I said, same with Mega Blastoise. I used to really not like it, but it's a really fun way to set up speed without T-Tar. And then Mega Pidgeot, you kind of want Hurricane, Heat Wave, U-Turn like 3 moves every week. And then you've really got like a 4th one for like workup, for like, yeah, it's like you can run workup or you can run defog, really, because Mega Pidgeot has like 6 relevant moves, but it's still a really good mon. And then rocks like Clefable, T-Tar, Excadrill, Chestnut with spikes. Like, you've got some really good hazard setters here. Looking at our weakness and resistance chart, hits for a team that has 9 mons, usually you see a couple of holes. The only hole I see is Keldeo being your only ice resist, but ice is probably one of the types that you're going to be weak to most, and then you can run Silvally Steel, you can run Silvally Water, you can run Silvally Rock, because I actually don't mind Silvally Rock, because its multi-attack is really good against mons, like teams that are rock weak. But yeah, so like that's kind of... I think Glop's got a really good team on his hands here, and I quite like it a lot. I think this is... Let's look at Tails' team as comparison. Tails just has like a crazy Volt Turn core, and then like mons that work well together, but I think... Where are we? Glop... Yeah, I'm going to give a Glop an 8.5 out of 10. Just because I think the individual Pokemon themselves are better on this team. Harris is our 3rd to last team. It's probably good, coming up right on about the hour-and-a-half mark soon. But yeah, so Harris has a Zeraora, Tapu Fini, Kyurem, Nidoking, Corviknight, Mienshao, Tangela, Mega T-Tar, Spectra, and Derosian. First thing I see about this, my initial thought is, okay, we have great speed tiers. Spectra and Zeraora go very fast. Mienshao goes fast, and then we've got some really good Scarf options in like both Mienshao and Kyurem. And then I see that there's a round 5 Corviknight, and then like round 9 Spectra. Like, that's value right there. I really like that. And then, yeah, it's just a lot of Pokemon that I personally enjoy. Like, this top 6 here, I'd happily take those. If you said to me at the beginning of the draft, like, that's your first 6, I'd be like, done, give me them. Because they're just a combination of, like, a really good speed tier with momentum and a great cleaner, also setup in Zeraora. You've got like 2 great bulky mons that complement each other. If you get a good ground type, which that ground type's Nidoking, which also breaks with Kyurem really well. Mienshao has great momentum. Then like Tangela, Mega T-Tar, Tangela, Derosian are just good value picks, and then Mega T-Tar, Spectra, I feel like rounds this team out quite well. And just looking at it, like physical breakers, we have T-Tar, Mienshao, Kyurem, kind of, but like not really, and then Zera, and then especially we have also Zera, Kyurem, Spectra. So like we hit hard on both sides. We have great bulk on both sides. I will say especially we're a little bit lacking. Mega T-Tar and Sand is really nice. Corviknight's pretty decent, and then Finny is good, but like Finny has to be kind of run specially most weeks, I feel like, or at least like with a bit of special bulk to help this team out. This part of the team just makes me sad because you started so strong. But Mienshao, Corviknight, Zera being your only pivots when you have so many mons that you want to bring in for free. You want to bring in that T-Tar, you want to bring in that Spectre, you want to bring in that Kyurem and that Nidoking. Yeah, it just makes me a bit sad. Because if this column was filled like a little bit more, this team would be really good. And then like Finny and Corviknight, really reliable defog. A little bit light on the hazard setting, but like Mega T-Tar can set rocks almost every week, and then Nidoking can do it like when you force a switch. So it's light but workable is what I would call this. But yeah, honestly, I would have loved to seen like I would have just loved to have seen like 1 or 2 more pivots, maybe instead of this Derosian, because I don't feel like Derosian's really needed on this team. And then maybe like instead of Tangela, because again, like, do we have a real like ground weakness without Tangela? Like, we kind of have Corviknight, but then you got like Finny, which just naturally can bulk it. So I feel like, yeah, maybe instead of Tangela, we'll get like a grass type with momentum instead of these 2. That's probably where I see. Let's have a look at our chart here, as we have been. Mega T-Tar being your only ghost resist is a bit iffy for the ghosts that get Focus Blast or like Drain Punch or whatever like fighting move they get, close combat. Is there any ghost type that gets close combat? I hope not, because that sounds scary. But T-Tar is one of the bulkier darks in the format, so like it can kind of deal with it. You're only having, one ice resist in Finny, but you have Curum, which is the ice type that can break Finny. Because thankfully we don't have a mon that has Bolt Beam Stab. Well, we do, it's just trash. So yeah, it's like, and then like, we only have 2 steel resist, but one of them's Corviknight. Corviknight's a great steel resist. Your Tran matchup is a bit horrible, but you've got like Finny there. So yeah, I really like this team from Harris. But as I said, it's being held back a little bit. I'm going to say I gave TCK a 7 out of 10. I think we're on par for that. I think we're on par for a 7 out of 10 here for Harris. So yeah, we're gonna move on. I think that's really all I've said to say. Oh, one thing I will say is breaking the darks for Spectre is one really big thing. Like, you got Finny and Manchow, which is a fairy and a fighting that can come to most games, and you just have ways to break it in Nidoking and Curum, hitting hard. So I think Spectre is a really nice fit. But yeah, so that's kind of one last thing I'll add to this team. Second last team we have is Sagai, who is someone else who has filled their team and someone else who has drafted. Very interesting. Like, we will address this at some point. That looks like a lot. But we have Megalop, Latios, Weavile, Nihilego, Vikavolt, Blissey, Runerigus, Whimsicott, Alolan Golem, Forretress, Volcanion, and Unfezant. First thing I see off the bat is like, why are these 3 mons anywhere near a team? They are pretty trash. This is your ground type, which is just not good. But we will see how it gels. Like, that's one thing I find. If you're going to fill your roster, you're going to have a couple of Pokemon that just aren't great. And already I would like, looking at these, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 mons here. Just cull these and get a good flying type and a good ground type, and you're set. Yeah, so looking at our speed tiers, this is why everyone else has bad speed tiers, because we have 4 mons over 110. 3 of them are going to come to almost every game. So yeah, like, big check for speed tiers. Physical breaking, we get Megalop and Weavile do it pretty well, and then like Volcanion can go physical, but it's not the most amazing. And then these 2 Pokemon shouldn't be on the team, so they're not really counted. Special attack stats, we have Volcanion, Latios, Nihilego, Vikavolt. Like, that's some pretty good offensive power. And then like taking hits, we have like Volcanion, Runerigus, Vikavolt can take them, and then like Runigro. Then you got like Alolan Golem and Forretress, which can, but these 2 mons are like terrible, so I don't think they should be anywhere near a team. Spadef wise, we've got Blissey, which just takes all your hits, and then Nihilego and Latios takes the special fighting hits, which stop Blissey. Okay, so moving on to our pivots, we have 3 Volt Switches. 3 U-turns, 3 Volt Switch, and then Blissey with teleports. We have 7 of them, which is quite good. 7 out of the 12. That's quite solid. Megalop being great momentum getter, Vikavolt being a great momentum getter, but then it's like Unfezant, Whimsicott, Alolan Golem, Forretress. So, no, like 3 of those mons shouldn't be on the team, and then Whimsicott really, like, Whimsicott does so many things that it really doesn't want to run U-turn a lot. Because if you think about it, you click on Leech Seed, you click on like all these other stuff. It's just, yeah, a bit interesting. What we go for? Defog. Like, you've got pretty good removal here. You've got Priority Defog, Volcanion and the Latios can do it in a pinch. And then once again, these 2 mons shouldn't be here. I can kind of see why Forretress is here. It's for Rapid Spin because, like, look at your hazard game. But then, like, Alolan Golem, Forretress, and Runeriga, like, these 3 mons aren't going to be coming very often, I don't feel like. Blissey's really reliable, Nihilego's really reliable, so you don't need these extra rockers here. You got Forretress with spikes and T-spikes, Nihilego with T-spikes, Runerigus with T-spikes, and then Vikavolt with webs. One thing I will say is we have a really fast team already. Like, looking at what benefits from webs on this team, it's kind of Volcanion and, like, Nihilego to an extent. And so, for me, like, I love Vikavolt as a mon, but I just don't think it's like really worth it here in terms of running webs. Especially picking it round 5, I think that's super early. And one of the things you can see is like these 4 mons really good. Neolego's a bit early, but these 3 were taken right. And then just from here down, it's just stuff we've taken early, a value Volcanion, and then just a bit of garbage in the middle. Just because, like, I don't mean to be mean, but like Alolan Golem, Forretress, Unpheasant, they're not good mons. Like, no one can argue that they are. And then Whimsicott's decent. Runerigus, like, if you took all the points from the mons that aren't great, you could have a really good ground type in here, and I think that would help a lot in terms of breaking, like, in terms of being, like, a good bulky ground type that has recovery and isn't, like, yeah. So one thing I will, like, once again, we can come across to here, and it will be a pretty well filled out. Like, yeah, you only got 2 rock resist, but one of them's Runerigus, the other one's Megalop. Only 2 water resist, but then you've got a water absorb mon and Volcanion. So it is filled out, and there isn't like an obvious something like comparing it to, say, Harris has only 1 ice resist, so you can look to exploit that in team building. But you almost don't need to with a team like this, which is why I'm one of the biggest advocates of drafting like 9 or 10 mons rather than 11 or 12, just because spreading your points to those extra mons just isn't going to net you the same value. But in saying that, we've got good breakers, we've got a decent amount of momentum, we've got like a decent defensive backbone and good hazards, so I think it's still a 6 out of 10. Just because it does check some boxes, but it's not the most amazing, in my opinion. Spheal is next. We got the Rillaboom, Mega Medicham, Gengar, Togekiss, Scizor, Seismitoad, P2, Alolan Persian, Druddigon, Xurkitree, and Carkol. Personally, just for me, I love that round 1 wheel. Like, Rillaboom, Mega Medi, that's really nice to me. Excuse me, I got a bit of a cold. Allergies acting up. I'll try to mute that sneeze. But yeah, so speed tier wise, we don't quite get the pass, but we have the priority button, so it's not terrible. I won't like deduct too many points from it or anything. Looking at our attack stat, we have a decent, like, we have Rillaboom, we have Mega Medi, we have Scizor, and then we got Druddigon, kind of, like, almost counts. So, like, that's a good set of physical breakers. Especially we have Gengar, Togekiss, and Xurkitree. 3 mons that can hit quite hard, although Togekiss doesn't often run, like, max special attack sets, just from my experience. I've used Togekiss quite a bit, and I find that just naturally it likes checking things due to its typing, and then, like, nasty plotting from, like, a bulky set. So it's not super immediate damage, but I don't think that's really a problem here. Taking hits wise, like, it's kind of Togekiss, P2, Seismitoad, do like a decent job, and then on the physical side you can throw like a Alolan Persian and Druddigon in there as well, and then Scizor. So it's like we got a decent defensive backbone, but it's not amazing. Like, again, you might struggle to take those just big in your face physical attacks with this team. Looking at our pivots, we have Alolan Persian, Scizor, Rillaboom, Xurkitree, P2 as our momentum, and Teleport into Mega Medi is really good. Some slow momentum from Scizor is really nice into Mega Medi. Parting Shot into your breakers, I think, is underrated because, like, obviously you're lowering the attack stats, so they can come in on things that previously they wouldn't have normally come in on. So I think that's quite good. Removal is Togekiss, Scizor. Yeah, Carkol's here, but it's going to come to, like, set hazard and spikes against the dude that has no removal once a season. Scizor and Togekiss, both, like, pretty decent removalists. Kind of don't love doing it, but it's like, actually looking at it, like, Togekiss has such bad 4 move slot syndrome because you want, like, Air/Roost, but then you want, like, T-Wave Nasty Plot, or, like, Dazzling Gleam on there, or then you can run, like, Toxic, or just, like, there's a lot of moves Togekiss wants to run, and then Scizor loves running, like, SD Bullet Punch U-Turn, like Roost, or then you can run like a Curse set. You can also run Choice Banded. So if you're banded if like they know you're banded and you click Defog, that's a horrible time because you kind of have to double and they can predict it. It's all sorts of things. So yeah, I would love one more remover. I think Sphere could really do with one more remover. Hazard Setters, Seismitoad, and Drudagon, and then the very occasional Carcol. Seismitoad and Drudagon are both very reliable. How often they come to games, I think Seismitoad can come most weeks and set rocks. But then also like these 5 plus like one of these 2, or even Circuitry, so maybe Size gets left off a few weeks. Just because like I really like these 4. I think that's a really nice core to have. You break your Bulkic Psychic super well with Gengar, and then you have like something to come in on them with Persian. But yeah, let's look at our weakness and resistance chart. Our only flying resist is really Circuitry, and that's kind of a problem because that's like special flying types, like Taunt T, is going to be real hard for this team. Like, it puts more pressure on P2 because P2 is such a good like taker of hits. What I do like is Mega Medi, Gengar, and Togekiss all take fighting hits like very well for P2, which is your like one of your dedicated defensive checks to things. Only having... Well, actually, sorry, Seismitoad is a Water Absorb Mon, so you've got plenty of resistances there. Just having a look, scroll across a little bit. Yeah, so we've covered our types pretty well here, which is something that I would expect from the top division. But yeah, no, I quite like it. I think it gels well together. It's kind of just a bang average team, and I think it's bang average in this set of draft is about a 6.5 out of 10. Like bang average in a good way, sort of thing. Like this is a pretty standard draft. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, and I think it'll turn out quite good. But yeah, so I'm going to stop rambling because I've been talking for an hour and a half, and you can probably tell that my voice is going very quickly. This is now like 3 hours of stuff that I've done today. But yeah, anyways, thanks for watching. If you've made it to the end, be sure to let me know. If there's anything that you disagree with or that you think you've been very harshly done by all means, ping me and I can like maybe write out my thoughts a little more concisely and just directly in a message, or we can have a discussion. But yeah, anyways, thanks everyone for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow with, I think it's Elementary that's winning the vote at the moment. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Elementary. Yeah, anyways, I will see you all next time.